point one. As usual in the house tonight, we have Mr. NJIE and John Charles. That's the Straight Talk team, and obviously that's DJ Bombastic, managing the controls. It's been quite an interesting week in Gambia, quite an interesting time that we're living in. And Straight Talk is just here to continue the national discourse as to charting the way forward for our country, bringing to light issues of the day and trying to discuss intellectually, putting emotions aside, but looking at what is in the best interest of the country and just talk straight to the issues at hand. Mr. NJIE, once again, it's good to have you here on Straight Talk.
Thank you, and good evening, listeners.
Mr. NJIE, I'll begin with the issues at the National Assembly. The National Assembly seems to be flexing its muscles now, maybe possibly realizing, or some would say, especially members of the National Assembly would say they have always known that they have that power. But as we have seen, the National Assembly has called two ministers. If I could recall rightly, I know the Minister of Fisheries and also the Minister of Interior to answer to questions, present their reports, and be questioned by members of the National Assembly. And it's quite interesting to see that. I think this shows also that our democracy is gradually moving in the right direction, because they are that's the body that should really be the first stop to hold government accountable, or the executive accountable, and keep the executive on the right track. And this week, we've seen that they've called two ministers to answer to them as to issues that are very key for the development of the nation. Let me hear your views on that, having National Assembly call ministers to question and to account for the activities of the ministries.
Well, you said they're flexing their muscles. I don't think their muscles need to be flexed, for the simple reason that it's not about coercive power. That's not the power given to them. Their power is legislative power, power that is written in the books and must be heeded to. Anywhere else in the world, the Minister of Fisheries should have honorably resigned. Why? His actions shows ineptitude. His actions shows disregard. Why? He swore to the Constitution of the Republic, and the Constitution of the Republic stated clearly that the Gambia cannot enter into any bilateral arrangement without the ratification of the Parliament. Therefore, that instrument signed with Senegal is null and void as far as our laws are concerned. So, him going to the Parliament, and the Parliament giving an extension even for 1 hour for those bilateral arrangements that are not based on law to still stand, shows a violation on both sides, the legislative and the executive.
But maybe just to, I listened to an other interview that this agreement has been signed all they have done maybe is to renew?
No.
That's not the case?
No. If you signed an agreement and it's a continuum, then you don't need a renewal. Because a renewal basically gives you an option to get out or to continue.
Okay.
But you need to put it on ink for the continuation to be effective. So therefore, if that contract wasn't signed, or that agreement wasn't signed, Gambia would not have been bound to those obligations. So you're saying that you don't believe this agreement was before this regime came? No, see, we need to understand.
No, because there is that agreement.
Allow me. Gambia, for the longest, have had bilateral arrangements with Senegal, from security to fisheries to cultural.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
From the days of Senegalo-Gambian Secretariat to now this new entity, I don't know the name again, that's at K Point, but that's not the issue. The issue is, if that agreement was ongoing, why do we need to re-sign it? Because it expired.
Okay.
So after something expires, you renegotiate. And when you renegotiate, you re-sign.
Yes.
So what we have re-signed needs ratification. And therefore, since it wasn't ratified, it is illegal. And that illegality must not be condoned even for 1 minute, because the respect of the Constitution must be sacrosanct, and it must be the first amongst anything we do.
But don't you think the Parliament is giving the Minister the benefit of the doubt, in the sense that there is this position that this was an agreement that was ongoing, whether it was renewed or what, and to see the agreement, because they've called for the agreement.
Mr. Njai,
yeah.
If the agreement was effective in the regimes before, be it Jawara or Jammeh, why do we have to re-sign it? The mere fact...
Did they resign?
Allow me.
No, because I'm a bit confused. I'm hearing two sides.
Allow me. No. Senegal and Gambia re-entered into an agreement early 2017, no later than February, March, if it's not even in January. The point here is Parliament needed to have the last word on the document prior to it being effective.
Okay.
And since that didn't happen, as far as the laws of the Gambia and the Constitution of the Republic are concerned, that agreement is null and void. And today, we are using an agreement that's null and void, and Senegal is doing whatever they want. Here is the problem I have with the fishing arrangement we have. Senegalese fishermen can fish in our waters, be it their trawlers, they can fish and land in Senegal, vice versa.
Okay.
But you see, in agreements, you need to have what you call equity. Our total coastline is less than 48 to 50 kilometers, right? Our total fleet size of trawlers registered here most likely are not more than 100, 150. The Senegalese coastline is 4 times, 5 times our size. So you cannot allow them to have equity, vice versa. What that means is we are not getting a fair share of what they're getting out of our arrangement. But even if we had arrangements in the past, it's the responsibility of Gambians to relook, rethink, and reposition our agreements to the best interest of the nation. And right now, as is, our fisheries sector hasn't benefited Gambians. Why? Gambians are protein poor because their substitute for not having fish is chicken, and the chicken they're eating is high with antibiotics because it's poultry and imported chicken. So let me just finish. The Ministry of Fisheries must have a social consideration in their policy making to make sure that the average Gambian, who is already poor, 70 to 80% of our population live below the poverty line, i.e. more than $1.50 to $2 a day. Therefore, it's the responsibility of this sector to make sure the poor and vulnerable Gambians have an access to a good source of protein. And their cheapest source of protein is bonga. And now the poor Gambian cannot afford bonga, thanks to our poor policy that is skewed more towards favoring others other than the Gambian, number one. Number two, if you look at the amount collected by this sector in license, fines, and everything else, it's pittance relative to what can be harvested out of our ocean.
But it will be interesting to know what is the potential benefit versus the actual. Because if you say 461 million or so,
what are you benchmarking against?
Well, exactly.
Simple.
So it will be interesting to do a study or to have a study or a report to show what our potential is.
In this world of today, you don't need studies and reports. What you need is you benchmark yourself against others.
Okay.
Look at Mauritania. Look at Senegal. Look at Cape Verde. Then you look at Gambia. You look at what they make out of their fisheries. Then you prorate this relative to our size of coastline we have. That's one way of doing it. You say, look, if Senegal is making $40 million a year in fisheries, they have a coastline of 200 kilometers. The Gambia have a coastline of 550 kilometers, relative type of species of fish coming out of it. If they can make 40, what is stopping us from making even 10?
Okay. Because there is two things here. You talked about the minister resigning and everything. But again, Parliament has a role to play. But one of the parliamentarians said something that was very interesting, that one of the things with the minister, he always accepts his faults, and Parliament accepts that
my friend,
the minister is...
My friend.
No,
allow me. Accepting fault.
Let me land. I'm just bringing another position that a senior National Assembly member was interviewed, and I listened to the interview, that, well, one thing about the minister, he always apologizes when he's wrong, and he's always frank and open. So is that not also...
No.
For me,
those errors and omission are a grave concern, and it shows ineptitude, and therefore, Gambia is not a social experiment. Gambia is not a social experiment. The lives and livelihoods of Gambians is not to be put on a trial and error basis. It is too primary for a sector like fisheries to be doing such, grave errors. That is not acceptable.
The fisheries ministry comes and says, look, Gambia has never benefited 461 million. Has never had the opportunity of training over 1,000, I don't know what figure they gave, over 1,000 young people and things like that. Because our country is so now polarized. I mean, somebody can say, well done, fisheries ministry. Like you said, we have not benchmarked the 461 against anything. So, really, where are we on this?
Mr. Njai. Dafa am waxtu bo xamne bu joté dañ wara xolante ci bot ñuy wax dégga te buñ ci rus dara te buñ ci seet boti kenn buñ ci seet mboka buñ ci seet xarit. Ministry of Fisheries, nothing to do with this administration. From previous administrations to date, they have failed Gambia in making sure that our marine resources are optimized for the benefit of Gambians. Directly in terms of cash being accrued, and indirectly by us getting a good source of protein from our fish at an affordable price. Ñu ne dañ jënd ay gaal pour jàngal xale yi nappa. Demal waa fi Bakaw nga seetla di nga fekk ay doomi Gambien yuy nappa. What we are doing have failed, and I will tell you the simplest example we can do today. A week ago, I was at Wafinjago because a friend of mine owned trawlers, Gambian. And guess what? Most of the trawlers that docked at Wafinjago were Chinese. I am not at fisheries, but I had something in mind. An average old trawler will cost you $300,000 to $400,000. What is stopping the government of the Gambia from investing in 20, 30 trawlers? And it's not going to be a public enterprise. This youth employment, a trawler, yes, get a captain. Allow me. We have Navy officers who have retired. They're captains. Employ them. Give them a crew of 10 people. Get an assistant captain. These people can go to sea, bring 12 tons at least on a weekly basis. 12 tons of fish sold is over 1.2. And guess what? They will pay for the capex, the capital expenditure of the trawler back to the government, and they will make a meaningful livelihood. We need to allow me. We need to up our game. Artisanal fishing will keep people poor, but it will make them survive. What we need to do, commercial fishing, but this time we need to make sure Gambians are involved. And we haven't had any deliberate policy, to make sure the Gambianization of our fisheries sector is realized. So therefore, all governments, from Jawara, Jame to this one, they are not fit for purpose as it relates to the exploitation of our marine resources. Period, point blank and simple.
I think one of the National Assembly members, I think Badil raised a very good point that why didn't they reinvest the 461 million into Gambian-owned businesses in the fisheries sector. Maybe that's the point, that maybe they should have gotten trawlers rather than the boats.
No. What we need, to be honest.
But again, let me just, they gave boats, they said they bought these boats for the Gambians, but the boats ended up in the hands of non-nationals. If they bought trawlers and gave it to Gambians, would it not...
My friend, forget about that. The Minister of Fisheries respectfully at the gallery of the House said, I am a social worker. He doesn't have the acumen to understand and manage such a resources. He doesn't have the acumen and what it takes to monetize our marine resources. Sometimes, and this is the problem of the African, particularly the Gambian, we operate beyond our pay grade and we are not willing to see that we are not fit for purpose. No disrespect to him, but he is not the one who can drive and turn around that sector, because that sector needs a disruptor who is going to come in and stop business as usual and do something that hasn't been done. Okay,
let's move on, because I want to look at another ministry that was called to the Assembly, the Ministry of Interior, concerning the number plates. Sometime back we saw there was a report that the way the number plates contract was issued and everything. But again, it's just whether the National Assembly will just stop at questioning, or the National Assembly will take significant action when they see that the ministers or the ministries are not performing as they should. In case they find wrongdoing, negligence, and all this abuse of office, should the National Assembly really be just calling and questioning, or taking appropriate steps to ensure that whatever malfunctioning is happening in our ministries are we put a stop to it?
Gambia, we have a problem. The problem is called procurement irregularity and procurement legislation deficiencies. So everything the House is doing right now is a waste of time. They need to tighten up the procurement laws of this country. I will start with the Banjul contract. A contract that was single source. A contract that was incompetitive. A contract that had a payment schedule agreed and accepted and signed on only to be changed. Why? Because you have weak procurement laws. Forget about that. Now to the number plates. No, allow me. Now to the number plates. If they want to fix the number plates, it's just one problem within a bigger problem. What we need to do, why are we having this problem? Is the why that we're not asking. We're having it in road construction. We're having it in number plates. We're having it at the airport as it relates to security contracts. Who is going to handle it? We're having it God knows where and where and where. It means our procurement systems are weak. Then it's the responsibility of the legislature to say we are going to strengthen the procurement procedures of this country, thereby taking discretion out and putting procedures in and reduce corruption and the incidence of corruption.
But even if the laws are weak, are we really serious, especially in the National Assembly? Because just like they called the Minister of Fisheries the Minister of Interior, whether the laws are weak or not, it is whether the people have followed the weak laws and whether they deliberately bypass the laws or take advantage of whatever. I mean, because it stands to question that if a ministry is supposed to do ABC, the Bible contract for instance, how come nobody in the National Assembly is questioning the Bible contract? Because from one discussion that even the mode of payment has been revised.
Yes.
Has it gone through the National Assembly?
But forget about that.
Or is the law, does the law permit such to happen without the endorsement of the National Assembly?
Every people get the government and governments they deserve. The quality and caliber of our people at the National Assembly is what we want and deserve, because we turned that place into a popularity contest from different neighborhoods and constituents rather than looking for effective and efficient leadership. within these communities and constituents to go and represent the best interests of the greater good. So we are about to have another legislative election shortly. I do hope this time around it will not be a popularity contest, but a contest of people with substance who can sit there and make sure that the greater good's interest is not only preserved but championed.
Okay. Before we open the lines, let's look at the issue of politics and the pending, the divisions that we see, the insults, without the political party leaders coming out constantly to ensure that there is sanity. If things continue the way they are going, that anybody can insult along tribal lines, the political platforms that are being used to peddle this kind of hate, the police being silent about hate speech, not arresting people, not prosecuting people, and we are just like, almost like sitting on a time bomb. And if things take this trajectory, come December 4th, what really are we going to see if all the political parties are not engaging at the top levels and also talking to their supporters?
Well, the political thermometer of the Gambia has reached a boiling point. And unfortunately, it's a mixture of things that has brought it to that level. One, our political system favors political division for its long-standing survival from PPP days to date. It's a politic of division, not a politics of issues. Rather, it's personality-driven. Secondly, the electorate, the people who should go out there and vote, they have allowed themselves to be pawns in the games of the political man. I won't call them masters, political players. And up until that changes, you see, politics is not driven by the politician. Politics is driven by the people who want. That's why conscious places, they say special request on a popular demand. The people make a request and the demand is met by the politicians. So the agenda must be driven by the people, not by the politicians. When politicians drive the agenda, they do what's good for them. And what's good for them is the easy way out to victory. An easy way out to victory in this case is division. And division is not good for our national identity. Division is not good for our core ideals as a nation. Division is not good for us to foster and build a unity and a unified country.
But what is wrong with the masses? Because at the end of the day, you get into fights. In fact, somebody said with the politicians, you will see none of their children, especially into these fights. If there is bloodshed, their children, possibly by the election time, they would have sent all their children away. But what is wrong with us, the masses, that we have to keep fighting each other on behalf of these people? That at the end of the day, they don't really have our interest. And secondly, I'm just coming from all these regions, from Basse to around Bansan and North Bank, Lower River region. The state of the country, the levels of poverty you see, and you take that against knowing that the people that are in government, the people that are supposed to have the well-being of the Gambia, are mostly maybe people coming from these regions. They've left these regions, they've come to the urban area, and somehow, after 50-something years of independence, the poverty levels are possibly on the increase.
Absolutely.
You know, and it is so disheartening. I can say I'm a city boy. So I am not very much of it until I travel. But you have come from that place. You grew up in that place. You have seen poverty. Occasionally you will go to see your relatives. But you are not doing anything, with your conscience to help your people. Maybe with time, now we see that Mankabankunda has a mansion. Kanilai, some few years ago, has a mansion.
There's nothing to be proud of.
But that's what I'm saying. But in the midst of this ocean of poverty, you see just one, like a city on the hill.
Well, that is a clear testimony of the indifference and disregard of the plight of the general public. See, I'll start with President Jammeh before coming to Barrow. Jammeh really, I'm sorry, and this is sad to say, people thought he was empowering his people by giving them handouts and building edifices around them in the village. That's not the help his people needed. His people needed help to be independent. Mun sen bopa, mom sen bopa, gadu sen bopa. Now, we were hoping of a U-turn come this administration. We have seen 2 buildings in less than 4 years, or 2 projects in less than 4 years by the current president in his home village. Why didn't he do it all these years? He's been in Gambia. If he has money, why now? Why not then? That's a suspect, and that's highly questionable. But Yermande, public servants, you don't get into public service to enrich. You get into public service to impact lives, livelihoods, and make a difference in societies and communities. But unfortunately, in the Gambia, public service is an avenue to self-enrichment. And self-enrichment is detrimental to collective progress of our society and communities.
Well, listeners, we will open the lines now. Please call. The number to call is 446-1193, 446-1193. You could call and give your own opinion. Every opinion is respected. All we will not permit on the program is insults and hate speech, but we welcome every opinion. Good evening, caller, and welcome to Straight Talk. Maaleykum salaam. Bolo Rosi.
Jërëjëf Salangari. Jërëjëf.
Comme nous croyons from independence about this sector. Not about me, man, I could name it about 20 captains. No, you talk more than about program to the sovereign was complicated. We have captains who are taking also going to
Amsterdam.
No, I know them one personal. I know them personal. But it's not problem with the with the member of parliament of Banjul. Kokuma mom ñoo lay apply photo. Apply photo la wax. Dafa am liggéey. This is very sorrowful after 4 years of our signing contract for foreign companies come and go and in this country around 400 and something million. Very shameful and detrimental. Then you know, I'm not going to experience.
Yeah, Jeff.
But we need some men to be the one in this country. Let's know about
Okay.
That's called experience. Sometimes you talk about things like that. We are not attacking nobody. Think about our country. Now, I asked him after the delivering this answering question. They were talking with man and family, I think. One of the things that they were saying, when again, want to defend after you have concept and the members of the asset. My understanding is.
Okay.
Jerry Jeff. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rosie.
jërëjëf.
jërëjëf. dégg nga.
jërëjëf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie.
Thank you.
Mr. Jai, the competence of the minister in your area of, in the area where you are knowledgeable and all that, you have a technical team around you. Should we be having a doctor as Minister of Health?
No,
or can we just need, because they tell you that it's political office.
Now, if a politician wants to be a Minister of Fisheries, I'm not saying to have a PhD. Understand business, understand the economy, or have an in-depth technical knowledge of the sector, because it's a sector that the country needs to monetize. So you need to know how to monetize it, or you have technical skill of how to develop the sector.
No, but
so it's either bringing in money. No.
Is it the minister or is it the permanent secretary?
No.
But they normally
my
have.
brother.
The
technical skill must reside with the technician, the civil servant, because the minister is not a civil servant. PS down.
No, that's where I'm coming.
But.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
All right. Interesting. Let's take the next call. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Spectrum. Yeah.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
There is something that we are lacking in Gambia, maybe and I don't know what I call honor. Jom moo fi ñàkk jom moo fi jeex.
dégg nga.
ñu amatul jom. nit ki da nga am jom nga def liggéey boo xam ne correctul nga xam ne mënuma liggéey yu bàyyi lii. dafa mel ni jom ak ngor dafa jeex ci Gambia. ngor ak jom daf fi jeex. ñu bàyyi loolu nañ ñu dimbale nañ ñu jàppale please. dem help us. If you are not, you're going to do the job, you're going to deliver, please. It's honorable and very noble. But you're going to stay there when you're going to deliver it and giving it to the public.
Okay.
Just stop that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
kii li mu wax dëgg la de dëgg bu set wecc réew mi li fi manqué gis nga léegi Gambien bi maa tey dara yaay de cover shame loolu moo fi am léegi waaye wax na dëgg ngor ak jom moo jeex ci réew mi.
All right. Ngor ak jom moo jeex. Again, I still believe we have honorable people. Maybe
no. We talk, when we talk about mainstream.
I get you.
Ndox mi fam daan taa mu faa taa ba tey ña baaxoon ñu ngee baax ba tey waaye liñ ne ngor ak jom nit dafa amoon nawle nit dafa amoon lu mu bañ. bés ñun suñ daan dugaleel saaleekum yaay booy. njure yaa ngi nuyu bañuñ dara gannaaw dóor xaste kenn bëggutoon ko waaye léegi nit ñi bañuñ ku leen xas. Once they think they are living in comfort. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Spectrum.
Hello.
Yes, welcome.
Wow, jërëjëf. Sanjay.
Yes.
Waaw ñu ngi kontaan rek di rafetlu ci programme.
Jërëjëf.
Pasala. Kolo lu mu wax rek Alaaji Ba Malick Talla. Su waxee rek dama dee fàttale ko kii koro ñun dañ daan dema moom gis nga kii koro di maturity dafa important. Waaw maturity dafa important trop. ñu ñëpp fàttale ko kii koro time am. ñu daan wax yëpp loolu mooy xamul li mu nekk. People should be very revolutionary minded and to be aware. But we have lots of educated schools. Some of the educated schools, I have not told you that ci loo xam ne yow xamuloon ci dara. Moo tax
Mr. Jai, the issue about maybe even if you think you're not competent, what is wrong with bringing minds that are technical, competent, and bringing them in the discourse? Because I see our government sometimes as also being so far removed that you have just a select people around you. You don't want to open up to bring competent people to add value.
It means you're not a leader. It means you're not a leader. And today, if you give me a scorecard to grade the Minister of Fisheries and his ministry, I will grade him a flat, faltering, flat F failing grade for the simple reason Gambia waruta ñaka jën doomi Gambie warut a ñàkkal liggéey su ñëwee ci ndox mi su fekkee